ESG world is absolutely vast, and we've seen a range of different viewpoints. I myself am a sustainability director. My name should start by saying who I am, actually. That would help. My name's Asif Din. I'm sustainability director at Perkins & Will, and we are designers, and we do quite a lot of hospitality. Quite a lot that we've covered today actually resonates with me. You know, we have designed an 80% circular hotel room. We've been doing 100%, you know, sort of like zero carbon operational buildings. But it's sort of like the important thing is we have to find out what's really important to us. And hopefully this session will actually give you some of those pathways to actually see how other people are doing it and how you can actually start. We've talked a lot also about materiality this morning, and one of the main lessons for me is deciding what is important and what isn't. What do you let go? And the all-important roadmap for your organizations. So create the baseline, create the roadmap, and then see where your destination actually is and track against that. So with that, I'm just going to hand it over to Catherine to do introductions as we go around.
Thank you. Are we talking about the one thing that this means to us as well at the same time, or am I jumping the gun?
Yeah, you're jumping the gun a bit. Just an introduction, thanks.
I know we haven't got much time. Hi everyone, I'm Catherine Dalton. I am Chief Sustainability Officer at IHG Hotels and Resorts.
Hi, I'm Soraya. I actually don't know my title, but I'll just, I do sustainability. I run the sustainability projects and initiatives at the 4C Group.
Hi, I'm Tim Wielden. I'm Managing Director of Zeal Hotels. We have 2 hotels at the moment, an Ibis and a Holiday Inn Express, and we're in the process of developing, and hopefully we'll be coming out of the ground very shortly with a new net zero carbon hotel here in the UK.
Good afternoon, everyone. Adam Dawson from LaSalle Investment Management, and delighted to be here on the panel, so thank you all for persevering and sitting here to join us today.
Right, okay, let's just get into it. Catherine, first question's for you, really. In terms of, could you describe the ESG initiatives that you actually have, both internally and also for your operators?
So at IHG we have Journey to Tomorrow, which is our responsible business plan to 2030, and that covers people, communities, and planet. So within that, on the planet side, the really big task for us is our science-based target. So we have a 1.5 degree aligned target, which will mean halving our emissions regardless of growth to 2030, which is really massive for us. IHG, we have over 6,000 hotels across 100 countries globally, with a further 1,800 in the pipeline, and it's pretty much all franchise or managed, so it's other people's money. So we are trying to work very closely, obviously, with those partners to enact change. So for us, it's all about the targets. We are a FTSE 100 listed company. We're also secondary listed in the US, so a lot of regulation. The joys of TCFD, which I do actually like, because I think it's been great in terms of integrating a lot of the thinking around climate change into the business, working with risk and strategy and finance. So that's kind of what it means for IHG, and actually Journey to Tomorrow itself has been really important to us in terms of our colleagues and wider stakeholders. It's been great from an engagement perspective. It's really integrated into our purpose as a company, and we have a strategic pillar around care for people, communities, and planet. So it's really at the heart of everything IHG does. In terms of then how we work with our hotel owners, and we have a couple of them on the stage today, so thank you. For me, sort of doing the right thing goes without saying, but it's all about how do we help drive commercial value to those ownership groups. So it's about everything we do, how do we drive the top line? So thinking about, increased demand from guests for sustainable hotels. We're getting lots of data requests. We're often the scope 3 of the big consultancy companies. They're wanting more and more data, which in turn will start to drive their travel decisions. It's about, simple things like the guest experience. So if you have a well-maintained PTAC unit in your hotel room, then that's going to be much better for the guests. It's about obviously the bottom line. So it's about cost savings. So how can we link the efficiency measures, the waste saving measures to cost savings, demonstrate that to owners. And then it's about asset value. So, how is this all integrating into the long-term value of assets? So it's really just being able to work with owners and partners. Tim is a member of our Owners Association Sustainability Committee, so really helping to work together to understand the value of all these initiatives.
Thank you. Soraya, we're all on this journey, effectively, on trying to measure these things and actually create those targets. Can you describe what you're doing at the 4C Group?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started, it's a bit overwhelming because, first of all, we had to define what net zero meant for us, and also the concept of ESG and how we could implement it and tailor it to our business. So the first thing was to understand what we're doing, what we were already doing as a business. So what initiatives we had for local communities. We had 2 new assets, one of which we're sitting in right now, that we're going through a BREEAM assessment. So it's pulling all of the existing things that we were doing that we didn't really know how to communicate, pulling those things together to evaluate, trying to create a baseline, which is what we're doing right now. And what I mean by creating a baseline is on the sustainability front, and using the SDG goals to inform our social endeavors. But on the sustainability front, we were trying to measure our carbon, we've measured our carbon footprint across all our assets, and aligning with the SBTI, trying to figure out what is practical for us by 2030, 2035, 2040. I think that's the key thing, is not being overwhelmed, because obviously we want to be ambitious, we want to hit that 2030 target, but is it realistic to us? And what can we do along the way? And so we've done it by scopes, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. So we have our own targets for scope 3, and we're working towards net zero by 2030. And then establishing those targets. I think the key thing is buy-in, like really, obviously from a management level, C-suite, but like working with the hotels, the assets themselves, the brands. We're getting a lot of pressure from guests, from corporates asking us about our own sustainability strategy, but really working with the different departments. When I started, I come from a tech background. I've been working in tech for 5 years, and then obviously after COVID, I wanted a change of career. And so I decided to go into hospitality, and I did various jobs, including housekeeping, night duty, and all of these, and maintenance. And that really just kind of formalized and created that foundation of what each department would need to get to if we wanted to achieve net zero. And working with them, making sure that they understand the journey themselves, and making it pertinent to their department. So for housekeeping, we can think about maybe the linens, we can think about the amenities. On the brand side, understanding where those amenities come from, if we're doing a group order, asking those suppliers, the chemicals that are being used, really driving in. I think one thing that I can say about the journey is the more questions you ask, the more you don't know. And so, even from the waste management perspective, diverted to landfill, understanding, we want to calculate every part of the process, but asking your suppliers, how are they calculating it? What values they're providing to you? Because that will be a huge factor when you're measuring your carbon footprint, which is what we're finding right now. We're switching providers because they're not able to provide those measures, those values that we need to start creating a baseline for. And then hopefully the next journey is tracking our progress. So we have now an action plan that we'll be sharing with the group. It's tailored per asset. So as Catherine mentioned, we have a few IHG hotels. We have the Marriott, we have the Hilton Canopy. So each one has a different market, a different asset. And so we need to make sure that they're able to hit their own targets that we've set.
Thank you. Tim, as an owner, sort of like an operator, can you describe, we've talked about stranded assets this morning. How are you protecting against being a stranded asset?
Nobody wants their assets to be stranded at the end of the day. That's one of the worst situations you can possibly get yourself into. But obviously, you need to just keep investing. It's all about reinvesting, changing the style of your hotel, the brands itself, and the change in the brand specifications, adhering to that, and working with the market. Obviously at the end of the day, there are, however, costs involved in doing that, and that's ongoing. We're lucky in the respect we've got a Holiday Inn Express it's been open about 3 years. We've got an Ibis which has been open 18 months now, so they're relatively new. So we're only getting into sort of refurb literally within the next sort of year to 18 months' time. But it does cost money. The other issue we have now in terms of potential stranded assets and costs is obviously adhering to ESG policies and requirements that are going to be laid down, particularly for the hospitality industry. And it is very, very important that we take that into account as well, because that's an additional cost. So it's not only the refurb side that we've got to take on board, but it's also the actual additional cost that we've got to lay out for various bits of new equipment and things like that for complying with ESG regulations. And it's also one thing that what we need to do is actually reduce our carbon footprint, full stop. We've all been talking about it today. It's been the topic of conversation, and the one way that we can do it as hoteliers certainly is actually reducing our energy bills. It's one thing that we have to do. It's a paramount thing at the end of the day. There are various ways that we can do that. The one thing that we've got to do really first of all is actually work out what our energy bills are. Well, actually what they are. What is our use throughout the year? We get onto something which is called EUI. Now, we'll just have a quick show of hands here. Who's heard of EUI? Okay, we've got 3 or 4, 5. Thank you, John. EUI is energy use intensity. It basically measures what it costs in a kilowatt hour to heat or to cool a square meter of a building. Right? So it basically works out the efficiency, the heating and cooling efficiency of the building. And it's something which we've all been talking acronyms today, I get that. Don't forget this one. It's become as important as your GOP, your NOP, your EBITDA, RevPAR, etc. What's your EUI? It is going to become really important because it does measure the efficiency of your hotel, of your heating and cooling of your hotel. How do you measure it? You get your electricity bills, your kilowatt hours. It tells you how many kilowatt hours you've actually utilized for that quarter, for that 6-month period, that 12-month period, whatever. You then add to that. I'm talking about electricity now. You're talking about gas as well. A lot of us have got gas central heating in our buildings, in our hotels, and you take your gas cubic centimeters that you've actually utilized, multiply it by 10.66. That converts it into kilowatt hours. Add your gas and your electricity together. That gives you your full kilowatt hour consumption for that particular year. You then you then divide that by the square meterage of your building, internal square meterage. We started on this probably 12, 18 months ago, and we did our first one. We did the Holiday Inn Express, and for year ending, I think it was July actually last year, we ended up with an EUI for the 12 months of 198. We did the same thing for the Ibis Hotel. Recently, it only opened up a little bit more recently, but we did that one, and that came in at 214. Now, to me, those aren't bad figures. Other people will probably come up with better figures, maybe, and other people come up with a lot worse figures. So what you need to do is you work out what your EUI is. As a matter of interest, the EUI for the new hotel that we're doing down in Exeter is 54.7. So that's a lot less. We're utilizing a lot less electricity, and that's just pure electricity. There's no gas involved. There's no fossil fuels at all in that one. So what do you do with your EUI when you've got it? You then go to the CREM monitor, right? Carbon risk reduction monitor, and it's a website. And if you want to get information on this, I did a presentation on this about 6 months ago. There is something on our website, which is www.zealhotels.com. You can go on there and you can download this information and basically how to do it. You go onto the CREM monitor, you put in the input in terms of the country you're in and the actual industry you're in, obviously the hotels industry, and you then work out. So it gives you a graph, a pathway as to what we've got to achieve up to 2050. Now, a lot of banks and institutions are actually utilising this now as a guide to seeing how hotels are actually performing in getting down to carbon net zero by 2050. The 2023 target is 211. Right? So if you're below 211, you're in business. Well done. Pat yourself on the back. If you're above 211, you've got work to do. Our IBIS is 214. We've got some work to do on that, and we've also got to do some work on the Hicks as well. What we are doing, and we are for time.
Yeah. Well, we carry on.
What we are doing. One thing that we are doing is we're putting in some voltage optimizers. Now, how many hoteliers have we got in the room? If you actually own hotels and assets, not that many, a couple of them. Okay. You may well have heard of voltage optimizers. You may well be utilizing voltage optimizers at the moment. Basically, all the appliances that we have, that we own, whether they're kitchen appliances, whether it's private personal appliances, fridges, freezers, whatever, they all work on 220 volts. We pump in 240 volts. It's the grid. It's an ancient, out-of-date grid that we have. It is not going to change. It is too big. It will take too much time and cost far too much to change it. So we are going to be sticking with the 240 supply. But you can buy a voltage optimizer, which then is basically a box, and you plug in your 240 supply, and out comes 220 out the other end. Now, it's not a cheap box, right? It does actually cost money. But we are actually going to be reducing our electricity bills by 10%. Now, if we take our electricity bill last year at the IBIS was 275 grand, right? So if we're going to reduce our invoicing by 27.5 grand, spending just shy of 20 grand is a good deal, right? It's about a 9-month payback. It's a no-brainer. So that's what we're doing. And if we take the IBIS in, for instance, that's at 214. That's the EUI on that will come down to about 196. So that gives us about another 3 years on that pathway that I was talking about, on the actual CREM pathway. So there's other little things as well that we could talk about in terms of actually looking at the energy supply for the kitchen extraction fans and things like that, and monitoring that properly. But the voltage optimizer was probably the biggest one. But there's a lot that we really do need to be doing as an industry in this respect. We are adopting these within our 2 existing hotels, and we'll certainly be taking them forward with a new one. I think the one big thing that we are looking at is not only doing the right thing, I think in terms of reducing our costs, but also becoming greener in effect, being more sustainable, but also potentially actually retaining value. It's very important to retain the value of the asset.
Thank you.
I hope that answers.
No, that's super practical and, super practical advice. Adam, a quick question for you. In terms of ESG and investment risk, we've talked about CREM analysis, sort of like, could you just talk a bit more about investment risk with ESG?
Thank you. So our role is to find opportunities for investors. And across Europe, we have about 1.5 billion in hotel strategies across different capital pools. But just to reflect back to the start of the day, we saw a slide and heard about how the financial crash on Wall Street instigated better financial regulatory standards. I remember when I was studying, health and safety was the Wild West. And now everyone is expected. It's assumed. You must be able to do it. The transition we're in right now is the shift for ESG to go from, as people have said earlier today, from the voluntary, from the unstandardized, and shift into regulated reporting. It was a real pleasure to hear Janine from the ISSB, because nothing has dominated my mind more over the last 12 months than having to prepare for TCFD. Now, this is for the UK clients who are mandated, and this is now regulated by the FCA. So it is here, and it is happening now, and it takes up 99% of my waking time. Broadly speaking, this covers mitigation, it covers adaptation of climate risks. So for mitigation, that's really the creme. It's the carbon reduction. It's about how do we identify reduction in emissions. For adaptation, it's about becoming more resilient to future climate risks. What I think is most exciting from a real estate perspective, from a hotel perspective, is the practical opportunity we have to do that and to deliver that across one of the most important industries when it comes to the impact on ESG. The crux of TCFD is to determine what is the cost to achieve net zero carbon and what is the cost to ensure that we're resilient in the future. So all of the analysis we do, the CREM analysis, the climate risk, is to determine to what extent our investments need to step in, need to lean in, and need to understand what the costs are to take us to 2050. And can we unlock value doing that? So I just wanted to pick up on a point that's been mentioned throughout the day, but also just now on the panel, which is about collaboration. It is so important that we unlock all of the ways of working we've had in the past, and we don't assume that everyone understands everyone else's perspectives, that we just ask the questions and we make sure that people are aware of what the ambitions are throughout the sector. And I'll give a very quick case study, if that's okay. We have a hotel here in London where we know what the clients want, what the investors want from ESG performance. But had anyone told the operators? Had anyone told the developers? Had that been explicit? Did they know that they could be ambitious? Did they know that we would work with them? That we could look at this at every stage of the asset life cycle? So we just asked, did they want to be more ambitious? Did they want to work with us? And the answer was yes. It was very positive. As soon as we started to explain to them what the drivers were, what people's interests were, how we could contribute, how we could learn from other asset classes, how we could learn from other projects we'd worked on, everyone leaned in. And it was a really, really positive experience. I mean, sure, it wasn't there's no cookie cutter available now. It is problem solving, and we have to collaborate to be able to achieve that. Back to the question, did we unlock any value? What we found was yes, we did, because this hotel has been able to secure a far greater rate of corporate clientele who are aligning with their own corporate strategy. And this has given us a much more stable return. And simply this comes from being open, having discussions, being collaborative, being clear, as well as being ambitious. Because some of these targets that are being set, they are very ambitious, and we're going to have to work together to achieve that.
Thank you. Do we have any time for questions? One question. Who's going to be the lucky person? Oh, hand shot up over there.
It's a question for Adam. What are you seeing, Adam, in your investors' willingness to finance CapEx to make those kind of sustainability improvements?
So it's quite variable across the different types of capital. I think we've got really positive engagement when we're able to bring accurate information to the table. What people struggle with, whether it's for assets that we have under management at the moment or whether it's proposals we take forward to the investment committee, is just the big gaps in knowledge and having confidence in the information we're getting. And that comes from, is the building vacant? How do we know what... We're shifting from design into performance in use. So if there's only one message from me to the whole industry is get that information about performance in use and bring it forward so that we can make informed investment decisions, because if we're informed, then the capital's going to come here. But it's very hard to persuade people to walk into with a blank check. We need information.
I think that's a brilliant way to end. That's a fantastic, great. Thank you all very much. That's brilliant. Well done.